This past week, I was off to a party. After pinching myself multiple times to see if I was actually invited, I tried running out the door, but ran into my father instead. He caught me smuggling a bottle of Tiger Woods cologne. He snatched it from me and asked why. I mean, well, it got Tiger an attractive wife and 13 fallbacks, so I took a shot. But then my father told me something that I would never forget. The phrase of the night, act cool. What does that mean? It comes up in everyday conversation. Like, oh, that's cooler. I wish I were cooler. Wow, that suit you're wearing makes you look pretty cool. Thank you, but what does that mean? The Journal of Individual Differences from the University of Rochester states that a change in the definition of cool has been sparked. However, this alteration may not be for the better. Turns out the generations before us had a better grasp on coolness than we do today. And they're from the Colonial Congress. The men that drafted the document that is now stored beneath inches upon inches of bulletproof casing can teach us about the most fragile of things, ourselves. So let's start by first examining the colonial definition of cool. Then we'll discover how moderation can be key to coolness. And finally, we'll analyze the misguided precept in which the cologne you wear and like to wear reflects the cologne you wear in here. And maybe along the way we'll discover that the revolution that is to follow isn't entirely necessary, that it's a retaliation of something not inherently bad. Therefore, let's call this Congress to order. In the movie 1776, the pre-revolution trials of the American Congress are highlighted. While the progressive desirers for revolution are absent, the conservatives who are against revolt convene and subsequently sing about it. The movie's lyricist, Sherman Edwards, puts it well when he writes, "Come ye, cool, cool, conservative men, for our like may never be seen again." First, the men in the chamber are acting cool. Not the cool that people perceive today, but the composure definition of the word. A sang-froid that is unbreakable, even by the idea of revolution. Second, but more importantly, they claim that people like them aren't going to last much longer. They had no idea how correct they were. Although the term still exists, appropriate meanings of cool have near evaporated from our vocabularies, and the trait itself is barely anywhere to be seen anymore. Isn't that pathetic? A movie about men in tights and knickers can possibly give us the closest thing to an acceptable definition of cool? Heck, we could get meaning from cats at this point. The animal, not the musical. Anyway, the conservatives teach us that men and women from all walks of life can be cool, just as long as you know what coolness is and how too much pride can land you in some pretty rough spots. In the sarcastic words of Christopher Lowe, stupidity combined with arrogance and a big ego will get you a long way. Despite the fact that Mr. Lowe was in a jazz troupe called the Nitwits, he is most certainly correct. Many people do often discover the true meaning of coolness. However, they overuse it, effectively crafting themselves a very tall, sharp throne of nails. Sure, it looks nice, but, you know. For example, a performer, let's call him Nelson for the time being, had immense amounts of talent, but wasted them by succumbing to his own pretentiousness. He was in a one-night performance and everybody seemed ready. The cast, the crew, even the audience was prepared to see the product in only 3 months of student-run rehearsal. A single spotlight. Nelson walks out onto the stage. The crowd's butts are out of their seats, ready to see Nelson rock his big solo number. And he was silent for 2/3 of the song. As was the audience, except for the occasional, accompanied by the sporadic, yay, or a, everybody was stunned. Nobody knew why Nelson had this deer-in-the-headlights sort of look, like when George Bush tries to read a scientific journal. So I decided to consult the greatest fountain of information mankind has ever created, UrbanDictionary.com. The wise website told me that arrogance is, quote, when somebody is led to believe that they are superior to everybody else. Although the same website told me that the word dirk, D-U-R-K, is a term for a week-old bowl of cereal, the first definition told me everything I needed to know. Nelson was an arrogant performer. And when he fell off his throne with that top-heavy pompous crown, he hit the ground hard. To truly be cool, we have to realize that consequences for our actions are inevitable, and that perfection is unfortunately impossible. However, in the words of football coach Vince Lombardi, in the pursuit of perfection, we are bound to catch excellence. So, unless we avoid pride and its harmful repercussions, we'll be right behind Nelson. You know, we're always trying to fit in, right? It seems most evident in Degrassi-esque, cliche high school TV shows, in which the girls try to keep up with the latest fashion trends, the head cheerleader, and the guys only get out of the bathroom unswirly to play a varsity sport. Except for that other Degrassi drama, like, OMG, Tiffany broke up with him, or, oh no, I'm pregnant with an alien, or whatever. I really watch the shows. Anyway, people in the real world often do place their social status and physical appearance on the top of their priorities. One thing that high school students often do to blend in with the crowd is to push others out. A study from the University of California, Davis's sociology department states that kids intent on climbing the social ladder use bullying to go all the way to the top, leaving scars as they go. Students often ostracize others in an attempt to up their coolness status with their peers. Let me give you an example of this. Me. There's a student at our school who is an undeniable nerd. Not that there's anything bad with that, considering I'm one myself. But kids mocked him for his strange interest in trading cards and medieval war video games. But he still stayed true to himself. One of his attackers was me. I constantly berated him for being a geek and stranger than the rest of the class. I didn't like doing it, because it constantly occurred to me that I was the reason that he refused to get out of bed in the morning. That he said, "No, Mom, I don't want to go to school today." Soon enough, my peers realized that I too loved those same trading cards, and they put me in the same place as my classmate. Yes, I descended a good amount of rungs, but right there, confidently hanging on, was none other than the one I was guilty of attacking. His self-confidence moved me, so I apologized. He forgave me instantly. However, the ends do not justify the means in this situation. I still wonder how I could have said the things I did just in an attempt to survive. I finally learned that what's right isn't always popular, and what's popular isn't always right. So if you see someone being stepped on so that others can step up, don't be mean. Stay on the bottom with them. I personally enjoy it there, because with your head below the clouds, you can see some beautiful landscape. All right, so here we are, back in the congressional chamber, where we aren't judged for the knickers we wear or the Tiger Woods cologne we use. However, we're probably still going to be awkward, and clumsy, and awkward. However, using your infallible coolness, those faults won't matter. English novelist William Makepeace Thackeray states that people who do not know how to laugh are always pompous and self-conceited. True coolness teaches us that our flaws can easily become punchlines. Take my chub, for example. Now, surprisingly, members of the opposite sex. Okay, any sex. All right, if I asked Rosie O'Donnell if this thing makes me look fat, she'd go, All right, so my pork chops aren't exactly the most attractive thing in my body. True. But I can crack a couple jokes about them, and people, including myself, can share a laugh. Famous scientist Marie Curie states that we must have above all confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something, and that thing must be attained. Now, this is coming from a woman who, if she lived in our time, she'd be called a nerd. But even back in her era, which is, by the way, the 19th century, she learned to love her gifts and her flaws. I mean, Google her. Yeah, she's not the hottest Bunsen burner in the lab. But she embraced it anyway. So, now that you're confident in what's inside and out, it's time to maybe try on a pair of tights and use coolness to your advantage. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time to be cool. To be you. Because your like, our like, may never be seen again. Congress adjourned.